Hey everyone, I'm Chris, horror filmmaker and fanatic, here to explain how scary movies are. Today I'm going over another Jordan Peele film, Us, released in 2019. Haunted by a traumatic experience from her past, Adelaide Wilson grows increasingly concerned when she accompanies her family on a vacation back to the site of the incident. Her fears soon become reality when at night, 4 masked strangers descend upon them. The Wilsons face more than a fight for their survival when they discover each masked stranger takes on the appearance of one of them. Made on a budget of $20 million, this movie made $255 million at the box office, literally the exact same amount as Jordan Peele's previous film, Get Out. Rotten Tomatoes score of 93%, audience score of 60%. That's a pretty stark difference. This movie had the best opening for a horror movie not based on an original property. Us has a lot of twists and turns and is pretty high conceptual, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, I would highly suggest skipping to this time code or using the chapter markers in the little time slider of the YouTube video player. So that way you don't get the film spoiled for you, because I am going to be going through all of the spoilers throughout the different categories of how scary this film is, and then at the end I will be doing an overview where I won't spoil it and I can just give you a quick little glance as to how scary I think the film is in different ways. And I would highly suggest doing that if you haven't seen this film. I think this film has a lot going on in it that's pretty twisty and turny, so you want to experience that for yourself. The story goes that after Get Out came out, Jordan Peele was a little dismayed at the genre disparity with that film. Apparently some people didn't really see it as a full-on horror film. It had some differences. And so with Us, he wanted to commit to making a full-on horror film. So what do I think? Do I think it actually is a scary horror film? Well, let's find out in Us. First up, the thrills, the intense, heart-pounding, exciting moments of a horror film. Us has some thrills in it. It's definitely got some more thrills than Get Out, for sure. And also more action, definitely. I mean, everything with the facing off between the two families is very thrilling and exciting. That's an entire long sequence in itself. Each of the different family members having different ways that they were combating their doppelgangers was really exciting and thrilling. And then it extends even farther after the big twist is revealed and there's actually more doppelgangers. In fact, the whole world has doppelgangers, and the whole White family just literally gets slaughtered in 2 seconds. And so then the Wilsons show up and then they end up slaughtering the doppelganger family. Like, there's a lot of kind of thrilling action moments going on. And I think there's sort of this fun where the Wilsons aren't very well equipped to fight back, but then they soon discover, wait, we can fight back. We actually do have this strength. Okay. Now, when it comes to the second half, I do think the thrills definitely die down, especially after the twist is revealed and they end up defeating the doppelganger White family. The thrills kind of fall away a bit and aren't as scary as they were previously. I think there was some legit heart-pounding stuff when the families first meet and Red is first speaking with that creepy voice. And then there is that epic showdown between Adelaide and Red, which is kind of thrilling, but it's sort of done in a more like a beautiful, like cosmic sort of way, with the mix of the dance metaphor and the ease and confidence that Red exuberates. Exuberates? I think I used that word correctly. It's kind of thrilling, but you know. So yeah, overall, I think the film has probably an above average thrill rating compared to other horror films, but I do think it is more thrilling in the first half when you're kind of more afraid of the threat. Next up, the grossness, the disgusting, ugly stuff that your mom doesn't want to look at. Us is pretty chill on the grossness. There's really not much to talk about. There is some blood and violence in there, maybe a little bit more brutal than like a PG-13 horror movie or whatever, but really there's just not much there. Probably the grossest part of the movie is Pluto's face. It's all like burned. That's kind of gross. But yeah, it's pretty tame on the grossness. Nothing much to really talk about there. Up next, shock value, the disturbing, surprising content that you didn't expect the film to show. Us is also pretty chill on the shock value. I mean, really, when you go into the film, you know, expecting the doppelgangers and stuff, you're like, okay. And then there is the fun twist that, oh, it goes even further, that there's an entire secret underground society and they've all planned this day where they're going to completely replace their up above versions of themselves. And that's shocking, I guess, but shock value really implies more about disturbing things that you haven't seen before, things that legitimately surprise and horrify you, because it is a horror movie. So the shock value comes from if you're horrified by it. I'm not horrified by the twist. I don't think most people were horrified by it. I think the only thing that's sort of like taboo or maybe disturbing about the film, other than just that, okay, there is an underground society and it is kind of messed up that they're like puppets on strings and they're forced to do the things, things that the up above people are doing, but it's not the same down here. So like when they eat, they have to eat rabbit meat, and their parents aren't actually their parents, and they all don't even know how to talk. Like, that's all kind of freaky and weird. But the only other thing that I can think of is just that you got like kids and teenagers just legit murdering people, but it's sort of done in a comedic way, so it's not really shocking. So yeah, shock value, pretty tame. And then finally, atmosphere, the overall tone of the film and how well it's building up that fear. Here's where there is some disparity, because I'm a little conflicted of where to rank this. I put it in the middle because, like I said in the beginning of this video, Jordan Peele apparently set out to make a full-on horror film with Us, but I actually believe Get Out was a more successful, straightforward horror film. With Us, the first half is great. The first half perfectly builds up to the reveal of the family, the conflict, the showdowns between each of the family members is very exciting and legitimately scary. I think the family standing in that driveway, that is a scary image. When they first break up and just start attacking is very freaky. Red is also pretty freaky with her voice. It's a little weird at first. You kind of aren't necessarily scared. You're kind of like me. I don't know. I kind of was maybe chuckling a little bit, but then I got used to it and I was like, okay, this is pretty unsettling. And actually, I think it works even better after you know the twist where her voice is messed up because she was choked. So, it messed up her voice. That then, when you watch it again, you're like, oh, that makes sense. But when you don't know that twist and you're watching, you're just kind of confused, like, why is she talking like that? Kind of sounds weird. But other than that, you got pretty much flawless horror, pretty good, spooky, scary build up, and the legit feeling of danger where, like, I don't know how this family is going to get out of this situation, how they're going to defeat their doppelgangers. This is scary. But then once the characters start becoming more triumphant in the middle of the movie and they're successfully defeating their doppelgangers, and then the twist is revealed where there's everyone is doppelgangers, and then the Wilsons show up and promptly defeat that family, is when the scares are starting to die down and I'm not really afraid anymore. Not only do I feel like these main characters can handle this situation, and also they're handling it in a comedic way where they're joking about like how many kills I got. The film then takes a more metaphorical expositional turn, and people have kind of criticized this, where the exposition dump of Red explaining her entire plan goes on for a very long time. And I think the ultimate way that I can summarize my feelings towards this film, especially now that I've watched it twice and I've done a fair amount of research figuring out, wait, what was going on? I think the questions brought up in Us were really interesting and engaging and legitimately scary, but then the answers aren't that satisfying. I think it's cool with the concept of an underground society that's tethered like puppets and they're forced to do the upstairs people's bidding by accident while the upstairs people don't even realize that they're doing it, and how that ties into class disparity and privilege similar to Get Out. The answers just aren't as interesting or relatable in a real world environment because it is full on fantasy. The idea of a secret society that is forced to do our bidding clearly would not actually exist in real life, and then the rules of that are weird and twisted, where okay, so all right, how would an entire society actually survive underground like that? How would they never be discovered? How big does that underground stretch out? Because the only amount that we see of it is just, a hallway with a few rooms. Like, could this actually exist? And also, how does it all really work? And yeah, you got demonic possession movies and ghost movies where not everything is explained. But in this case, this film is trying to tell you that this is a metaphor for the real world. But I think the metaphor doesn't fully tie in, and I also don't really find it scary either, and just the way the film handled it with the exposition dump and the comedy, it all kind of got muddled a bit, and I feel like the messaging was a little lost. So with atmosphere, I kind of just have to leave it in the middle because I think it is like spooky and eerie the whole time, but it's definitely way more scary in the first half before you start getting all the answers to the questions and the characters are becoming more and more triumphant. So that's where the film loses me on the atmosphere. On to the non-spoiler overview. There we go. So as you can see, this is a safe horror film to watch in terms of the shock value and grossness. You're not going to see anything that's really going to surprise you. Thrills, you got an average amount of thrills, so if you're not a fan of boring, slow movies, this one isn't it. This one's got a good amount of energy throughout it and some fun sequences. And then the atmosphere is conflicted because, as you saw in the beginning of this video, there is a disparity between the Rotten Tomatoes score and the audience score, and I'm sort of in that camp where I'm conflicted about my feeling of the film, and I believe it ties into the atmosphere. I think there are certain choices that happen in the film writing-wise that sort of clash with the tone of a horror film, where at first you're supposed to feel scared, but then things start happening and changing, and it becomes confusing and also kind of funny at times, and then it's a what? And by the end, you'll probably need to do homework to actually understand what happened. I know I had to. So then that's why you have an atmosphere kind of in the middle. I think it's more effective early on in the film. My recommendations: I am not the biggest fan of this film. I really enjoy the early parts of the film where I think it is full-on horror and it's bringing up these interesting conflicts and questions. But then once you start getting to the later parts of the film and you're learning more and you're getting answers to those questions, I don't find them as satisfying or scary. And I think the theme of the film gets lost on that because there is a disparity in the tone and the messaging. I think the film is still well made and there's a lot of genuine, intentions behind the writing and really high concept stuff. I would approach this film as more if I'm giving a healthy critique. I don't dislike the film in any way. I think it was shooting for a lot of things, but it didn't succeed in that front. But also, I'd like to hear from you. If you have seen Us, post a comment, let me know what you thought of it. If you disagree with my thoughts, I would also just encourage anyone to watch this movie because it's still a well-made movie, so definitely go see it. And that is how scary Us is. It's kind of scary, is the answer to this video, I guess. Check out the link in the description to rent the film on Amazon and post a comment. Let me know what other films you would like me to do. And yes, I will be going over Nope, so you don't need to ask about that. I gotcha. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.